As I was talking about Country Garden, we do see that they have a deadline payment and interest this week. Do you think this company is going to be able to avoid a default?
I think it is still early days to talk about a bailout. Certainly, the Chinese developer has been struggling for a couple of years, and Country Garden is definitely not going to be the last. So the central government is actually very concerned, and they are stepping in for the B2C segment of the market, but not really to directly bail out privately owned developers. But that could be a problem going forward, because if you look at the Chinese property sales, it has been quite dismal, particularly for the privately owned developers, because buyers tend to gravitate towards state-owned developers at the moment for the certainty of the delivery of the flats. So they are not really addressing the problem at the moment, but we think that the Chinese banks are very well capitalized. They are able to withstand this default if there is there's required bailout by the state banks. I think the government could step in to help further.
So if not a bailout, could we see consolidation? And which types of property developers, which names, if you can provide any, would be have the health to be able to buy smaller ones or the ones that are in trouble?
I think perhaps we would just look at the tiers, because there is a divergence in the price performance between the higher tier cities and the lower tier cities. The price gap continues to widen, and the support, particularly from the fundamental demand perspective, the support for the fourth tier, fifth tier cities have been very low. So in the event that there will be a buyout or restructure, it will be those in the first tier, second tier sector to buy over some of the smaller developers in those, or the government could just allow the consolidation of some of the smaller developers in the not so high-performing sectors.
Christine, before we lost you, I was asking you about the degree of systemic risk stemming from the China property sector such that it could cause global ripples. What do you think?
Certainly, it's a concern for every country in the world, because the size of the Chinese developers that is actually phenomenal. This is also because the real estate sector takes up about 1/4 of the Chinese GDP growth, whereas in the West it's only about 8 to 12%. We are remembering, those subprime crises and the moments of the GFC. Definitely, it's causing some concerns, but as I mentioned, the Chinese banks are all state-owned and they are very well capitalized. And given that so far it's been only two developers, Evergrande and Country Garden, I think the government's first and foremost the task is to help the smaller buyers, the end users, to get their support and to get the timely delivery of the homes. As for a contagion effect, we have seen some, especially in the wealth management products, we have seen some of these investors, smaller retail investors, being affected because their wealth management products were also backed by investments into these troubling developers. So going forward, we do see some contagion effect, but it's not going to be a Lehman-like crisis.